The airport buzzed with life, a cacophony of voices and the hum of rolling luggage that wrapped around me like an overbearing embrace. I stepped off the plane, my heart racing with anticipation. I had flown across the country for my father's retirement party, envisioning a warm welcome filled with laughter and gratitude. Instead, as I made my way through the terminal, I felt a chill settle in my bones that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. The familiar scent of my hometown, freshly baked bread mingling with the crispness of autumn leaves, should have brought comfort, yet it felt tainted. I could already picture my father's smile, the way it would crinkle at the corners, and I clutched the carefully wrapped gift in my hands, a symbol of my hopes for reconciliation. But as I approached the family home, a wave of uncertainty washed over me, the warm glow of the porch lights offering little solace. Inside, the atmosphere was suffocating. The dining room was set with meticulous precision, but the smiles were strained, almost mechanical. My mother, Evelyn, stood at the head of the table, her eyes sharp and calculating, as if sizing me up. I forced a smile, but the laughter that filled the room felt like a barrier, keeping me on the outside looking in. As we sat down to dinner, the air thickened with unsaid words. My brother, Mark, and his wife exchanged awkward glances, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was intruding on a secret I wasn't meant to uncover. The forced pleasantries felt like a cruel joke, each word laced with hidden agendas. I cleared my throat, attempting to break the ice, but my voice faltered, drowned out by the laughter that felt foreign to me. I glanced at my father, searching for a flicker of warmth, but found only a distant look in his eyes. The gift I brought felt heavy in my lap, a reminder of my naive hopes. I was here to reconnect, to bridge the growing chasm, but with every passing moment, disappointment settled deeper into my chest. How could I mend what was already so broken? The evening dragged on, and the laughter echoed hollowly in my ears, drowning out the warmth I had so desperately sought. My heart sank as I realized I was not just facing a cold dinner table. I was confronting the reality of a family divided by resentment and secrets, and my journey was just beginning. As the night unfolded, I felt the weight of betrayal looming over us, a shadow that would soon demand to be addressed. I had come seeking connection, but instead found myself standing at the precipice of a deeper conflict, one that would test my loyalty and resolve. My father's retirement was meant to be a celebration, but it felt more like a funeral for the family ties we once cherished. The tension crackled in the air, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the evening was only a prelude to the storm ahead. The dinner table loomed ahead, a battleground set for a confrontation I didn't quite know how to initiate. As I stepped into my childhood home, the familiar creak of the wooden floorboards echoed beneath my feet, a sound that used to bring comfort but now felt like a harbinger of tension. The walls, adorned with old family photos, bore witness to happier times, but they felt like a cruel reminder of what we had lost. I could almost hear the laughter of my younger self mingling with the silence that enveloped the room. Sitting at the table, I could feel the weight of unspoken words pressing down on me. My mother, Evelyn, presided over the meal with an air of authority, her gaze sharp enough to cut through the tension. I glanced at my father, hoping to find a flicker of warmth in his eyes, but he seemed lost in thought, a shadow of the man I once knew. The food, a spread of my childhood favorites, sat untouched as if the flavors were tainted by the underlying discord. As the awkward silence stretched, I cleared my throat, determined to break the ice. "Dad, I brought you something special," I said, my voice trembling slightly. The moment felt monumental, yet the response was a mere nod, devoid of enthusiasm. The air thickened with discomfort, and I felt the heat rising in my cheeks as I tried to mask my disappointment. Evelyn's voice cut through the silence. "Charlotte, don't make a scene, just enjoy the dinner. We all have our roles to play tonight." Her words stung, igniting a familiar anger within me. I could feel my heart racing, each beat echoing the frustration I struggled to contain. Memories of family dinners where laughter flowed freely flashed through my mind, contrasting sharply with the current atmosphere. The conversation, if it could be called that, was filled with forced politeness. Mark and his wife exchanged glances, their eyes betraying the tension that hung in the air like a thick fog. I felt like an outsider in my own family, as if I were peering through a glass wall, separated from the warmth I craved. My mind raced with questions. Why was it so hard to connect? What had changed? After dinner, I retreated to my childhood room, the familiar scent of lavender lingering in the air, but it offered no comfort now. I sank onto the bed, the soft fabric beneath me a stark contrast to the turmoil within. My heart ached with confusion and hurt. I had come here to mend the fractures, yet I felt more isolated than ever. The weight of betrayal loomed heavily over me, and as I gazed at the walls adorned with remnants of my past, I realized that the journey ahead would demand more than I had anticipated. I was on the brink of a breakdown, and the desire to confront my mother was bubbling to the surface, a storm waiting to erupt. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. I couldn't let this go on any longer. The time for understanding was nearing its end. I needed to confront Evelyn about the coldness that had seeped into our family ties. My resolve hardened, and I knew that the confrontation would be inevitable. The tension was palpable, and I could feel the storm brewing, ready to unleash its fury. The atmosphere hung heavy as we gathered for the family meeting, an unsettling silence filling the room. I could feel the tension prickling at my skin, like static electricity in the air, as each family member took their seat. My mother, Evelyn, sat at the head of the table, her expression a mask of cool detachment, while my father shifted uncomfortably beside her, his gaze averted. The wooden table, polished to a high shine, felt like a barrier between us, a reminder of the distance that had grown in our family. As the meeting commenced, I braced myself for what was supposed to be a moment of unity, but instead, it quickly devolved into a battleground of accusations and hurt feelings. I looked around the table at my brother Mark and his wife, who exchanged glances filled with unspoken tension. It was as if we were all actors in a play, reciting lines that no longer held meaning. "Charlotte, you need to understand your place in this family." Evelyn's voice cut through the air, sharp and unyielding. I felt a flush of indignation rise within me, my heart racing as I struggled to find my voice. "I just want to find a way for us to come together to heal," I replied, my voice trembling slightly. It felt like a plea, a desperate attempt to bridge the chasm that had opened between us. But my words hung in the air, met with a cold silence that felt suffocating. Mark leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "You think you can just waltz back in here and act like everything's fine? You don't know what we've been through." His words struck me like a slap, igniting a fire of anger within me. I felt the sting of betrayal, a family once bound by love now tearing at each other's throats. I tried to respond, to express my hurt, but the words escaped me, trapped beneath the weight of their disdain. "Why can't we just talk about this?" I implored, my voice cracking, desperation seeping in. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "Talk. This is not about talking, Charlotte. You need to recognize that we've been dealing with things you're not aware of. Your presence here has stirred up old wounds. We were managing just fine without you." The finality of her words left me reeling, a sense of betrayal washing over me like a cold wave. The meeting disintegrated into chaos, each voice rising above the other, accusations flying like arrows. I sat there, feeling the sharp edges of their words cut deep, the realization dawning that my attempts to mend our fractured family were met with resistance and hostility. The anger swelled within me, a storm gathering strength, leaving me with the bitter taste of betrayal. My heart ached as I recognized the truth. This family, which I had clung to, was now a battleground, and I was caught in the crossfire. As the meeting ended in disarray, I couldn't help but feel that the rift between us had only widened. My hopes for peace were dashed, replaced with an overwhelming sense of helplessness. I had come seeking connection, but instead, I found myself in a whirlwind of division and resentment, leaving me more determined than ever to uncover the hidden truths that threatened to tear us apart. The atmosphere shifted palpably as the evening wore on, a sense of dread settling like a thick fog around us. My father's retirement speech was supposed to be a moment of joy, yet as he stood to address the family, I could feel the collective tension rising, an invisible current crackling in the air. The warm glow of the dining room lights highlighted the anxious expressions on my family's faces, the flickering shadows dancing across the walls like specters of our strained relationships. As he began to speak, his voice trembled with emotion, but it was the content of his words that sent shockwaves through the room. "I want to thank my family for supporting me through the years, but there's something I must share that has weighed heavily on me." My heart raced at the ominous tone, my breath hitching in my throat. I exchanged glances with my brother Mark, who looked equally alarmed. What could he possibly reveal that would alter the fabric of our family? The revelation came like a bolt from the blue. Dad spoke of a betrayal that had unfolded years ago, a business deal gone awry that had pitted him against my Uncle Mark in a way I had never known. The words hung in the air, heavy with implications, as shock washed over me. I had come here seeking warmth and connection, but instead I was drowning in a sea of chaos, my father's honesty unraveling the very threads of loyalty I had clung to. Evelyn's face turned a shade paler, her eyes narrowing into slits as she processed the news. "You chose to share this now, at your retirement party," she hissed, her voice a mix of disbelief and fury. I could feel the tension escalate, my heart pounding in my chest. The air was electric, charged with unspoken accusations and simmering resentment that threatened to boil over. Mark stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor, a sound that pierced through the escalating chaos. "You never thought to mention this before? This changes everything." His voice was filled with rage, and I felt a deep sadness for the family I had thought I knew. It was becoming painfully clear that this revelation was merely the tip of the iceberg, and I was left grappling for understanding in a storm of emotions. The room erupted into chaos, voices overlapping, accusations flying like arrows aimed at wounded hearts. I sat there feeling increasingly like an outsider, the weight of betrayal crushing me. This was not the family gathering I had envisioned. It was a battleground, each of us armed with the painful truths we had tried to bury. My father's speech, intended to celebrate a new chapter, had ignited a firestorm of discord, and I was left struggling to find my footing in the turmoil that ensued. Amid the shouting, I realized that clarity was slipping further away from me. I had come seeking connection, yet all I found was chaos. The revelations had shattered any semblance of peace, leaving me to wonder if I would ever understand the true nature of my family's bonds. The chaos around me mirrored the turmoil within, and I knew that I needed to confront the heart of this disarray. The atmosphere in the living room felt thick with unresolved tension, a silent echo of the earlier chaos that had erupted during Dad's speech. I could sense the family's collective unease, like a fragile thread ready to snap at the slightest provocation. My heart raced as I glanced around the room, hoping for a flicker of understanding from my parents, but their expressions were inscrutable. It was as if we were all trapped in a glass box, each of us staring at the others with yearning, but unable to break through the barriers that had been erected over the years. In a desperate attempt to mend our frayed connections, I suggested a family meeting, my voice barely above a whisper. I could taste the bitterness of uncertainty on my tongue. As we gathered around the dining table, a sense of hope flickered within me. Perhaps this time we could truly talk without the biting sarcasm or veiled accusations. The table was still set from the previous meal, remnants of our failed attempts at connection scattered like forgotten memories. I took a deep breath, my palms sweaty against the cool surface of the table. "Can we try to talk about what happened earlier?" I ventured, my voice trembling slightly as I glanced at each of their faces. My mother's eyes burned with disapproval, while my father shifted uncomfortably in his chair, a clear sign of his internal struggle. Mark remained silent, his expression a mix of anger and confusion, and I felt the weight of their judgment pressing down on me. I pressed on, desperate for resolution. "I know things have been difficult, but I believe we can find a way to move past this. We're family, after all, right?" The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their implications. I noticed Mark roll his eyes, a gesture that felt like a punch to my gut, and my heart sank. I was met with a chorus of silence, the kind that gnawed at my resolve and made me question whether this gathering would ever yield the peace I sought. Evelyn finally broke the silence, her voice edged with annoyance. "Charlotte, you can't just come back and expect everything to be fixed overnight. You have no idea how long we've dealt with these issues. You're stirring up feelings that we've worked hard to suppress." Her words slashed through my hope, and I felt the familiar sting of frustration rising within me. I clenched my fists beneath the table, the wood digging into my skin as I fought against the emotions threatening to spill out. I glanced at Jake, who sat quietly beside me, his expression a mixture of support and concern. His presence was a small beacon of comfort amid the turmoil, but even he seemed unsure of how to navigate this minefield. "We can't keep avoiding these conversations, Mom," I retorted, my voice rising slightly. "If we don't talk about it, we'll never heal." As the words left my mouth, a palpable tension filled the air, and I could see my family's walls closing in around them, each of us retreating into our corners. I felt a surge of disappointment wash over me, a familiar ache that whispered my fears, that this family was too broken to save, that my attempts at peace were in vain. The hope that had flickered within me began to dim, leaving only the stark reality that perhaps I was fighting a losing battle against the very bonds I cherished. With each passing moment, I realized that healing would not come easily. It was a long road ahead, fraught with resistance and hurt, and I could only hope that my persistence would eventually break through the walls we had built around us. The atmosphere in the living room had thickened, a storm cloud of unresolved conflict hanging over us after my father's revealing speech. I could feel the tension crackling around the edges, each family member caught in a web of unspoken accusations and suppressed emotions. As I stood there, my heart pounded, matching the frantic rhythm of my thoughts. I wanted to scream, to shout the truths that had been festering beneath the surface for too long, but part of me hesitated, afraid of the fallout. Mark's voice pierced through the silence, laced with fury. "You think you can just drop this bombshell and everything will be fine? You've no idea the damage this has caused." His words ignited a fire in my chest. I had come seeking connection, yet here I was, standing amidst the ashes of our family ties, and I knew I had to act. "No, Mark, this isn't just about Dad's mistakes. It's about the way we've all let our grievances fester, how we've hidden behind masks of politeness while the truth rots underneath. The weight of my words pressed against my throat, but I pushed through, feeling a surge of determination. I could no longer be a passive observer in this family drama. I had to confront the betrayals that lay bare before us. Evelyn's face hardened, her mouth a thin line. "Charlotte, don't make this about you. You're only complicating things further." Her dismissive tone stung, but it fueled my resolve. I took a step forward, my hands trembling with a mix of fear and anger. "I won't stand by and let our family be torn apart by secrets any longer. I deserve to know the truth, as do you all." My voice rang out, a clarion call against the backdrop of our fractured bonds. I could see the surprise flicker across their faces, a moment of vulnerability that exposed the cracks in their facade. I was ready to pull the mask off our family's dysfunction, ready to face the chaos with open eyes. As the words hung in the air, the silence that followed felt electric. This was my moment of decision, a crossroads where I could either retreat into the shadows of silence or step into the light of confrontation. I chose the latter, knowing that this was the only path left to reclaim what had been lost. The storm was brewing, but I was prepared to navigate the tempest, determined to uncover the hidden betrayals that had fractured our family. This was not just about the past, it was about the future I wanted to fight for, and I would not back down. The confrontation would happen, and I would make my stand for the family I still believed we could be. The weight of betrayal bore down on me, a suffocating presence that demanded action. With the din of the family's chaos still ringing in my ears, I retreated to the solitude of my childhood room, the familiar lavender scent no longer comforting, but rather a reminder of the innocence I had lost. I sat at the small desk, its surface cluttered with remnants of my past, and pulled out a notebook, its pages crisp and waiting. I needed a strategy, a way to confront my family with the truth that had been festering beneath the surface for too long. As I scribbled notes, my mind raced through the events of the past few days, replaying the moments that had led to this point. Each word I wrote felt like a step closer to reclaiming my voice. "Evelyn's manipulation marks betrayal, Dad's hidden truths." I jotted down, the ink flowing like the anger surging within me. The notion of revenge was not trivial. It was a means to expose the layers of deceit that had poisoned our family ties. Why did they think they could keep me in the dark? I muttered to myself, gripping the pen tightly, my knuckles white against the pressure. Flashbacks of laughter now felt like a cruel joke, memories tainted by the realization of my family's duplicity. I was no longer the naive daughter who believed in their loyalty. I was a woman scorned, ready to claim my place in this fractured family. The plan began to take shape in my mind, a blueprint for confrontation. I would gather my family again, this time on my terms. I envisioned myself standing tall in the living room, the air thick with tension, delivering calculated truths like arrows aimed at their hearts. I would lay bare the betrayal they had inflicted on me, each revelation a piece of the puzzle that had left me feeling more like a stranger than a daughter. "I will not be reduced to a punchline in their family story," I whispered fiercely, my pulse quickening with every word. I could feel the resolve swelling within me, a fire igniting where there had once been doubt. This was my moment to reclaim my narrative, to demand the respect I had been denied for far too long. The stakes were high, but I was prepared to face the fallout if it meant unearthing the truth and healing the wounds that had festered for years. The confrontation would not just be a means of revenge, it would be my declaration of independence from the chains of their betrayal. I closed the notebook, the weight of my decision settling around me like a cloak. I was ready to step into the storm, armed with my newfound determination. The time for silence was over, the time for action had come. My heart raced not with fear, but with anticipation as I envisioned the confrontation that lay ahead, and I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. This was the turning point, the moment I would transform my anger into a force for change, not just for myself, but for my family. As I prepared for what was to come, I knew it would take courage to face the truth, but I was ready to unearth the buried secrets that had long kept us apart. My heart pounded with the promise of revelation, and I felt alive with purpose, ready to challenge the very foundation of our broken family. The living room was a cauldron of emotions, the air thick with tension as I faced my family, each of them a stone mask except for my father, whose eyes betrayed a flicker of regret. I stood before them, my heart pounding like a war drum, the gravity of what was about to unfold weighing down on me. The faint scent of burnt coffee lingered in the air, a stark reminder of the chaos that had erupted just hours before. As I scanned their faces, Evelyn's cool detachment, Mark's barely concealed anger, I felt a surge of determination coursing through me. This was it. I was done tiptoeing around their hurtful truths. "We need to talk about what happened today," I declared, my voice firm yet strained. The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the distant ticking of the clock, each tick a reminder of the time lost to their secrets. My hands trembled at my sides, but I steeled myself, unwilling to show weakness. I remembered the laughter that once filled this room, now replaced by the sharp edges of unresolved conflict. I'm tired of pretending everything is fine when it's not. You've kept me in the dark for too long, and I demand to know why. Evelyn crossed her arms, her lips pursed tight, but I pressed on, the words spilling out with a fervor I never knew I possessed. You can't just hide behind your manipulations and expect me to stay silent. I deserve to know why I was kept away from the truth, why you thought it was okay to let me believe in a family that never existed. Mark scoffed, his voice dripping with sarcasm. And what exactly do you think you deserve, Charlotte? You think this is all about you? We've had to deal with the fallout of your absence. You don't know the half of it. Each word felt like a stab, igniting my anger anew, but I refused to back down. You think I wanted to be away. I came here hoping to mend our family, but instead, you're throwing accusations at me like they're confetti. This ends with me. The intensity in the room crackled like static, and I felt the emotional dam within me start to break. This was my moment, my chance to reclaim my place in this family. I took a deep breath, my resolve hardening. I will not be reduced to a punchline in your story. I want the truth, no matter how painful it is. If we're going to heal, we need to face what's been hidden. A wave of silence washed over us, and I could see the gears turning in their minds, the weight of my words sinking in. I stood there, heart racing, waiting for their response, knowing that this confrontation was just the beginning of what would be a long and arduous journey to reclaim our family bond. The release of tension felt imminent, like the calm before a storm, and I was ready to face whatever came next. The air felt lighter after the storm had passed, yet the remnants of tension lingered like a delicate mist. I stood in the living room, surveying my family as they processed the confrontation. My father, typically stoic, now wore a mask of vulnerability, the lines on his face etched deeper with the weight of unspoken truths. Evelyn, her shoulders slightly slumped, seemed momentarily stripped of her usual authority, as if my words had pierced through the layers of her defenses. Mark, too, appeared different. His anger had transformed into a contemplative silence, his brow furrowed as he absorbed the reality of our fractured bonds. The remnants of our heated exchange hung in the air, heavy but necessary, like the scent of rain on parched earth. I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me, a small flame that dared to believe we could rebuild what had been shattered. As I glanced at Jake, I noticed the soft encouragement in his eyes, an unwavering support that grounded me in this chaotic moment. His presence was a balm, reminding me that I was not alone in this battle for our family's unity. I took a deep breath, my heart still racing, but now with a sense of purpose rather than fear. I know this won't be easy, I began, my voice steadier than before. But if we want to heal, we need to keep talking, keep confronting these truths together. I'm willing to do the work if you are. Evelyn met my gaze, her expression softening as she nodded slowly, the tension in her jaw easing. I don't want to lose you, Charlotte. I've been so focused on control that I forgot what truly matters. Mark's voice broke the silence, a tentative bridge over the chasm that had formed between us. I didn't realize how much I had withheld from you, Charlotte. I thought I was protecting you, but all I did was push you away. The sincerity in his voice struck a chord within me, and I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, not out of sadness, but from the realization that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. As the conversation unfolded, a sense of acceptance washed over me, mingling with the hope that had begun to blossom. We shared stories, memories tinged with laughter and regret, each moment a small step toward rebuilding the trust that had eroded over time. The warmth of familial bonds, once extinguished, flickered back to life, igniting a renewed commitment to one another. In that moment, I understood that healing would be a journey, not a destination. It would require patience, vulnerability, and a willingness to embrace the messiness of our relationships. But for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I believed we could navigate this path together. My heart swelled with acceptance, a promise that the fractures we faced were not insurmountable. As I looked around at my family, I felt a surge of hope, a sense that we were finally ready to face the future together. In the weeks that followed our confrontation, the atmosphere in our family shifted like the changing seasons. The once oppressive weight of unspoken resentment began to lift, replaced by a tentative warmth that felt foreign yet comforting. I often found myself reflecting on the journey that had led us to this point, the tumultuous path that had forced us to confront our truths. My father, once a figure of authority, now engaged in heartfelt conversations, sharing stories from his past that I had never heard before. The laughter that echoed through our home was no longer strained. It felt genuine, a melody of hope reverberating against the walls that had once felt so confining. Evelyn, too, transformed before my eyes. Her manipulative tendencies softened, revealing a vulnerability I had longed to see. It was as if the layers of her defenses had begun to peel away, allowing glimpses of the mother I had missed. We spent afternoons together, the scent of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the sweet aroma of baked goods, as we shared recipes and memories, stitching together the fabric of our relationship. Mark and I found common ground, the rifts of the past becoming mere lines in a story we were rewriting together. This journey of healing was not without its challenges. Old habits die hard, and the scars of our betrayals lingered like faint echoes. But with each shared meal and